Okay, so I think it's important to discuss what all is kind of under the umbrella of the NFA Act and what you can and can't own. You can own a suppressor, one that you've manufactured or one that you've transferred from, a larger manufacturer. The same goes for short-barreled rifles. You can manufacture one yourself on a Form 1. And I believe the same goes for a short-barreled shotgun. Now, destructive destructive devices are a little different. Is that correct?
No, you can actually still Form 1 your own destructive device if you wish.
And that's anything larger than a 50 caliber.
That's correct.
And I think certain other items fall into that, like the thing known as a street sweeper.
Yeah, there's two ways to define a destructive device. One having a barrel diameter over a half inch, and which has no sporting purpose.
Okay.
So all 12 gauge technically have a barrel diameter over a half inch,
right?
But they have a sporting purpose. When we talk about the street sweepers and the USAS 12s, ATF found that they had no sporting purpose. So that's why they end up becoming a destructive device. The other form of destructive devices that we have are those that are truly destructive devices, such as grenades and anything of an explosive nature. Most people are surprised to learn that under federal law, you can own a hand grenade.
Oh, yeah.
However, different state laws are going to vary on what types of NFA weapons you can own in that state.
Okay. Another important thing to talk about is machine guns. I constantly get asked about machine guns. People say, oh, I didn't know you could own a machine gun. And while it is currently very, very expensive to purchase one, you can definitely get a hold of one. Now, can you briefly touch on how that works or why you can't build a new one? You can purchase but not build.
Right. So previously I had mentioned about the Gun Control Act in 1968. And what the Gun Control Act originally did is prevented the importation of new machine guns.
Okay.
So we could still make them here in the United States, but we couldn't import any.
Okay.
In 1986, with the Firearm Owners Protection Act, we now said that you cannot manufacture here stateside any new machine guns for the civilian population. Only can be manufactured for military or law enforcement.
Okay.
So since 1986, there has been a ban on the making of new machine guns. And that's why we see this supply and demand curve where prices have just become astronomical.
Right. To give you an example, if you were going to buy, let's say, a 1977 Colt SP1, which is just a standard old school AR-15, you'd be looking at about $1,500, give or take. Now, if you went to buy its counterpart, a Colt M16, you're looking at roughly $20,000 to $30,000 right now, simply because there is a finite number of them that you're able to transfer to yourself as an individual.
And John, a good example of that is most people don't realize back in still 1992, Colt still had brand new manufactured M16A2s that they had registered before '86 that were available for people at $2,500.
Wow.
That same M16A2 today is going for around $22,000 to $25,000.
If only we knew, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, man. That would have been a beautiful thing. And I think it's important to note that while these things are great just collecting and they're great to have for fun and that kind of thing like we normally do, I think it's also important to note that these things are investments.
Yeah, they are, but I want to caution all the viewers on that.
Okay.
You should never purchase a firearm with an intent to resell it. Because if you purchase a firearm with an intent to resell it, technically you need a federal firearms license.
That's a good point. That's a very, very good point.
Because then you're in the business. If you purchase something, it goes up in value or declines, and you later decide to sell it, that's fine. You're not in the business. You didn't purchase with that intent to resell. So I frequently see people talk about, purchasing machine guns and other NFA weapons as an investment. Just be cautious of that because you don't want to be posting anywhere or making any statements that you're purchasing it with an intent to later resell it.
Right. Now, for somebody like myself, I shoot everything I own. There's never a gun. I know Josh is the same way. You get out and shoot it at least as much as you can. So that investment thing becomes a secondary benefit, essentially. And while it is a wonderful thing to have that value possibly go up, like he's saying, you definitely don't want to purchase with the intent to resell it right away or even in some exorbitant amount of time. you want to get out there and actually use these items, because that's why we're firearms owners, because it's awesome.
And John, the other thing to make sure the viewers understand is it doesn't just apply to NFA weapons.
Okay.
This applies to Title I, Title II guns
Yep.
as well. I know recently there were some people when AR-15s couldn't be had that were going up to like Cabela's and that, waiting for them to come in, buying them at Cabela's, and then going and putting them up on Guns America.
Right.
That's a concern. And I know for a fact ATF was aware of that, and they were
yeah.
tracking people.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe some people are currently being prosecuted for it.
And rightfully so. That's you're supposed to go through these channels, and I personally think that if you're just going out there just to resell, you're hurting the industry.
Yes and no. I guess the problem I have with it is I think a lot of people look at it like any other commodity.
Okay.
If they think gasoline's going to go up in price and they go purchase a bunch of gasoline to later resell at a profit, well, that's the beauty of our system.
Okay.
That's how America is great. That's
Right.
what we're designed around, is entrepreneurs who see the potential benefit and possibility of making a profit at doing something. And I think people figured that a firearm should be no different than any other commodity, which they should be able to buy and resell without any difficulty, and they enter it with that mindset. And that may play to their benefit if they are prosecuted, but I think it's important to make sure people are aware of this. And also in that vein, never talk to police. If ATF or police show up at your door, and they can be as kind as you can believe, you don't talk to them. I don't care what they tell you. They can threaten you with everything. They can tell you, well, you're leaving us with no other choice but to arrest you. You're leaving us with no other choice but to evict you from your home. We'll have to go out and get a search warrant and go through everything in your home. Tell them, good, you go do that. I'm calling my attorney, and I want my attorney. I've seen it all, and it's amazing how they can come in and be so friendly. And let me give an example. A good example that I have experience with is ATF comes into someone's home and says, we're trying to do a trace on this gun. And we know that you're not involved in it. You didn't do anything criminal. But what happened is the gun showed up at a crime scene. So we're trying to figure out how it got to this person. And, if you can give us any information on it. Well, the person at that point thinks, well, I need to help my country.
Right.
I need to help law enforcement. There was a crime that occurred.
I need to help my community.
Exactly. And they'll come in, and you may even get one ATF agent who will come in and say, yeah, he says, these AR-15s, they're really going for a high value anymore. He says, I'm sure glad that I purchased some and I've sold them, and I made a couple bucks. What about you? Did you make a couple bucks on this?
Yeah, kind of baiting you.
Yeah, absolutely. And inadvertently, the person will think there's nothing to it, and they'll say, I was able to buy it, and I sold it in 2 weeks, and I made, $500 profit. Bam.
Yeah.
You just made a statement against your own interest that's going to come in, and you're likely going to be prosecuted. And the likelihood is there was never an actual occasion where that firearm was used in a crime, other than what they'll allege was the crime of you selling a firearm with an intent to make a profit and not having an FFL.
That's just disgraceful if that kind of stuff happens. It's kind of depressing, honestly, that they're out to get people like that.
Absolutely.
Another type of item that you can get a hold of is what's called an AOW, or any other weapon. Do you want to kind of give these people a little background on what that actually is?
AOWs are very interesting. They are any other weapons, and there's a whole bunch of different forms of AOWs.
Yeah, that's a really vague term.
Yeah, and I love them. These are the gadget guns. So, like a belt buckle gun, a cane gun, some pen guns. And why I say some is it depends whether the pen fires from a position, I should say, that is straight, looking like a pen, or whether it breaks in two and actually looks like a gun like that. If it breaks in two and looks like a gun in order to fire, it's a regular Title I handgun.
Wow.
If it stays straight, like a regular pen,
then it's an AOW.
It's an AOW because basically it fires from what they call a disguised location.
Okay.
Other things that I enjoy collecting are the briefcases, the operational briefcases, where you have the firearm, usually a fully automatic firearm that sits in the weapon, in the briefcase, and can be fired from outside the briefcase without having to take it out.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. There, The briefcase itself is not the AOW.
Okay.
It's the firearm that would have to be registered as an AOW. Now, if you have something like a machine gun trumps AOW, so you wouldn't have to register it as both. But if you had something like a Mac 11 semi-automatic handgun, and you got one of the Mac 11 operational briefcases, you would have to register the Mac 11 as an AOW before even acquiring the briefcase again.
Wow.
Kind of like the SBR issue that we discussed.
Right.
AOWs can be all sorts of interesting things, as well as ATF has contended that a handgun where the individual places a front vertical grip on it now constitutes an AOW.
Like if you, for instance, if you took a Glock 34, it's got a little bit of longer rail section, and you put a vertical grip on it, that would be what's considered an AOW, correct?
That's correct. And it's important to note that depending on whether you're manufacturing or making an AOW or transferring an AOW, the cost is actually slightly different. If you're going to make an AOW, it's a $200 tax.
Okay.
If you're going to transfer an AOW, it's a $5 tax.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, that makes it a lot more manageable
if
you're looking to purchase one of those items.
Yeah, if you can actually find them. They're not super common, at least in local shops. You can find them online, but to see one in a local shop is actually kind of a rare thing.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a lot of collectors. They like the unusual. I'm one of them. I really love all those unusual trinkets and things. So
you guys should see his office. He's got some neat stuff in there. It's cool. Very cool. Another aspect of machine guns is that, like Josh said, that trumps things like a short barrel rifle and that kind of thing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Machine gun is the highest in the hierarchy, and also a short barrel rifle or a short barreled shotgun would trump an AOW.
Okay.
AOW is kind of considered at the lowest end of the spectrum. Destructive device would generally fall between machine gun and short barreled rifle, short barreled shotgun.
Okay.
So kind of from top to bottom, we'd have machine guns, destructive devices. Short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns are on the same level because really they're the same thing. It just depends whether we're dealing with a rifle or a shotgun.
Okay.
And then AOW's at the bottom.
Okay. And what that would basically interpret into is that if you bought a machine gun and it had a shorter barrel than the legal limit, then you would just register it as a machine gun. So that's kind of a thing that a lot of people don't quite understand, is that is actually the case. Machine gun trumps everything.
Right. Now, the only thing to be aware of is you may have a firearm that has multiple different NFA. Everything's a firearm under the National Firearms Act. So that includes silencers. They're technically firearms.
Right.
But may have multiple different NFA items, I'll say.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you have the HK-MP5SD, that is a suppressed machine gun.
Okay.
Generally, that is going to be a two-stamp tax gun. And the reason for that is you have one tax stamp for the suppressor, and you have one tax stamp for the sear or the machine gun. It can be a three-tax gun. Some people additionally want to be able to take off the trigger pack, the full auto machine gun part, and place a semi-automatic trigger pack on it. At that point, without the machine gun being installed in it, it would be a short-barreled rifle.
Okay.
So you could have a three-tax gun.
And that would cost you a lot of cash. But,
$600.
Oh man, that hurts the soul.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
but then again, if you can afford an MP5SD, you could probably afford another $600.
Probably. And like I said, generally though, most people are going to register it as a two-tax stamp gun, just basically the silencer, suppressor, and the machine gun.
Okay. All right, guys, that's it for our educational bit on the NFA. I want to say thank you to Josh for coming out and allowing me in his office.
My pleasure, John.
We definitely covered a lot of stuff there, so if you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment below. Hit me up on my Facebook page. Also, I want to let you guys know that Prince Law has their own website. It's princelaw.com.
Right.
And they also have firearmsindustryconsultinggroup.com, which is more of a specialized thing. So if you guys want to get in contact with Josh or any of his cohorts, please do that. They'd be happy to help you out in any way they possibly can. Now, they are a PA-based thing, so they may not be able to help you in your home state, but they can definitely direct you to somebody who will.
Absolutely.
So, as always, guys, thank you for watching. I definitely appreciate the support. And if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. It's a huge help to me, and you get to come back and check out all this cool stuff and learn a lot. Thanks for watching.